Just wait for people to come on.
Hi, guys. Can y'all see us? Can y'all see us and hear us? Okay. Yep. Okay. Can y'all hear us? Let me see, because I'm not for sure if they can hear us. Let me see. This is the first. Okay. Hold on. I just muted it again and it's still doing that. It's literally still doing it even though I have us.
Well, if you exit out of that, you can have it on here. You don't have to have the phone on. You see what I'm saying?
Can you? Okay. The audio is going to be the really tricky thing.
So that should be it.
Terrible feedback. And we're trying to stream on my channel and SoJo's channel. So we're running to it. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, we're trying to figure out how to do two things at once.
Can y'all hear now without the echoing, or is there echoing? No sound. Sounds better. Okay, social her mic is covering up her face. SoJo keeps her face covered. SoJo does not show her face. So anytime you see her, she will either be up here or down here covered up. Okay, sounds good. Sounds good. Okay, so we are streaming on my channel and SoJo's channel. So for everyone that is on my channel watching, hi, this is SoJo. And for
everyone on my channel, this is LB. She's
hi.
The one that teaches me how to use YouTube and do all these fun things, because without her, I assure you, we would not have it. She literally shows me how to use all of these things.
But I'm not that great at it either. This is the first time I've ever been able to stream on 2 different channels, and it took us a minute to figure it out, which is why we're late. So I do apologize. So myself and SoJo was at the Duggar sentencing. Hey, moderators, if people ask about SoJo's face, just let them know that she covers her face up on purpose.
Yeah.
I've seen that a couple of times about her face is covered up. So she does that on purpose to protect her identity. And she is a true crime. She's podcast, but she has a YouTube channel now. And that's why someone mentioned the back. That's this. She started covering the Duggars, obviously true crime. She had no idea.
I did not know people were really into the Duggars, so I cover true crime in Arkansas. The Duggars are obviously in Arkansas, and so I covered it like I would just in general. And then when I started doing that, it was all of a sudden, oh, there's actually people that cover them full time. I did not know there was this cult following of people that were into the SoJo or into the Duggars. I had no idea.
Yes. So she didn't know really what she was getting into. And I don't know where I'm being watched from. I think it's this camera, right?
No, up here.
Up there? Mm-hmm. I'm being watched from that camera?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So anyways, so when SoJo started covering the Duggars, that's when I came across SoJo. And ironically, she lives in Arkansas. So when the sentencing came, we decided I was going to come to the sentencing. And we showed up at the courthouse at what time did we get there?
So we originally planned on being there at 5 or 5:30, but there were some things that went on. We had to pick up another reporter friend of mine. And so we got there at 5:30, 5:45-ish.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's about right. Yeah. And we stood outside the courthouse until 8:30, which was when they let us in. We thought they were going to let us in at about 7:30, but they did not let us in until 8:30. But we were the first people in. I was number 8. No, I was number 7.
I don't know what number I was.
I was 7.
We just basically hung out. Mm-hmm. The thing is, the reporters, we know each other. So we were all texting beforehand, what time are you going? What time are you going? So we had fun waiting in line.
Yeah, we chilled with several people. Bobby Holt was there. Clint was there. Jim Holt was there for a little bit. He didn't stay for the for the sentencing, but he brought breakfast for some people.
Yeah.
So that was cool. Whenever they opened it, we went in and we sat in the second row. Let's see, I got my notes because I have everything written down from what time everyone walked in. Now, when we was walking in, so obviously we had to take our boots off, our heels, our belts, everything off.
It's like going through TSA at the airport to attend.
So when we were walking, we got into the elevator and we was actually one of the other ladies. Did we name?
Carrie Jernigan.
Carrie's
a friend of mine. She's a famous TikToker. She's an attorney.
Yeah, she's a TikToker. She's an attorney. She has like 1 million followers on TikTok. She was there. So me and SoJo and the lady from the Sun was all in the elevator and the door was about to shut. So I went to kind of grab it to leave it open so Carrie could come in, and I saw Anna Duggar and Josh Duggar's defense team coming in. So I ended up, I think I looked at you and I was like, and you're like, yeah, don't stare too much or whatever.
So don't make eye contact.
Yeah, don't stare too much.
Be cool.
So we went up. Yes, Bobby Holt stayed for the entire sentencing. And then we went and had chips and appetizers.
We had snacks.
Yeah, we had snacks after.
We attempted to have lunch, but lunch was so quick. So then we ended up doing snacks afterwards. We're just chilling out.
Yeah.
I love the Holts. I know the Holts.
They're really nice people. Tom, yes, you can ask me a question. So they let us in at like 8:30.
They didn't get started till 9:30 though.
It did not get started till like 9:30. As far as news outlets that I was aware of, the Sun, they had someone from the Ashley there, the Daily Mail, KNWA Channel 5, several. Yeah, Tom, you can ask me a question. There's several media outlets there, obviously. So Anna walked in and we're sitting second row. She was the first one of the family members to get there. And it seemed that she showed up with a blonde lady about her age.
Well, the blonde girl with her is very young. She's like 22.
Oh, is she?
She's like 22.
I thought she was like our age.
And she, I believe, is perhaps a law student and works at Travis Story's law firm. She was with Anna during the original trial. So she's back now. And yeah, that was kind of her person at the time. And then, of course, I'm going to get this wrong. David Waller came, sat with Anna. There's a person that I did not know that was there. And then her.
Yeah.
She had some other supporters there for her.
Yeah. When Anna first walked in with the blonde, they sat together for a while. And it was really weird. Anna was like giggling, at one point laughing so loud that like I know everybody in the courthouse like heard them laughing. When she was talking to people, like the people next to her, she would be laughing and stuff. It was kind of awkward because I'm like, you're literally here because you're about to find out if your husband's going away for 20 years. And you're just like kikiing it up with whoever this is. You know what I'm saying? So it was kind of weird. Jim Bob showed up and he sat right in front of me. Literally, like if I would have stuck my hand out, my long nail would have touched him in the back of his head, which was really wild.
And I was like, listen, now you know what I mean by this is the best, worst seats in the house. Like, keep your notes covered, keep the whispering as low as possible.
You don't want to be sitting there whispering about them when they're so close.
They're literally maybe 2 feet in front of you, and so privacy is limited.
I don't think the blonde lady was one of her sisters because she sat with Anna until right before the trial started, and then she went and sat along, like not with the attorneys at that table, but she sat up there.
I know who she is, but I'm trying to respect her privacy.
Okay.
She's definitely not family.
Okay, so prosecution, there was Dustin Roberts, William Clayman, Carly Marshall. There was someone else that I'm forgetting. Jim Petrell. Howard Acock, I think is his name.
So the whole front row on the right side
media.
were special agents.
Yep, government
agents, like attorneys, and then all media behind them. And there was a few extra people scattered in there. And then on our side, of course, it was family, us, people that knew them. We basically sat on the personal side.
Yeah, we sat on one side and media sat over here. And a lot of people keep saying Anna looks pregnant. Anna looks pregnant. And the
I thought she looked good today.
I did too. I'm seeing the videos and the pictures where she looks like she could be, but she did not look
fake
like
news.
that.
It's fake news. She looked good today.
She did not look like she had any sort of pudge in real life. It was weird when I saw the pictures. I'm like, I see a pudge there.
Well, that's what I was like. Was it Photoshop? Is it fake news? Like she looked good today.
She looked good. Yeah,
I think
she even has her hair dyed.
She does.
Yeah, she has her hair dyed.
I asked if that was okay. Somebody, I was like, are they allowed to do that?
They're starting.
That's a genuine question.
Yeah, literally, they used to not, but Jill, has dyed her hair, and I think it's kind of frowned upon, but
trending now.
Yeah, her hair is dyed kind of like a blonde color down at the bottom. Her nails done. I mean, she looked good. She did not look pregnant. It was really weird to see people saying that. At 8:45, Josh Duggar's attorney,
Justin Gelfand,
he came over and sat by Anna and the blonde chick and talked for just a short period, got up, walked off. Now, if I really wanted to, I probably could have heard what they were saying. Like if I was really trying my best. But I would have probably had to lean a little bit and it was kind of awkward. And everybody around me was talking too. So, but I was like, if I really wanted to, I could probably like lean in and possibly hear them. But that would probably be rude, and they would probably be like, "What the hell?
Yeah, like what are you doing?
What are you doing? Back up, weirdo!" So I didn't. He came and he sat and he talked to him for a second, and I just, I was like writing my notes that he was there talking to him. I'm like, just now at like 8:56, all the lawyers went to what looked like the judge's chamber. They walked aside.
Yes, it's on the front left. There's like a door that they go out, and so they went through there.
Not for long.
It was very quick.
Very
then they came back
quick,
out. One thing that was different though is during trial, the defense table is right in front of where we were sitting today, obviously, and then we've got the prosecution. So during trial, Josh sat on the left side of the table, so you could see his face the whole time, and you could see like his reactions and what he was doing. This time, they had him sit at the head of the table, so he had his back to us the whole time.
Pretty much.
Probably strategic given how he acted during trial.
Yeah. But it was really surreal because I've been watching this family. Like I started watching them when they first came out so long ago. So to be sitting an arm's length behind Jim Bob was really wild. To be sitting an arm's length away from Anna essentially was really wild. And then at one point I was like kind of chasing her I was trying to, I wasn't chasing her to catch her, but I was kind of chasing her to get a good shot when she was leaving. And it was just weird. It was just weird.
It's just different when you see them in person, when you deal with court proceedings in real life. It's very different than just the gossip stuff you see on media and news. Like you're living it. You're there. You're having to actually see their emotions and see.
Which they don't put off much emotions. No, they're very stoic. I mean, except the laughter before. Other than that, there was very, very, very stoic. At one point, Hannah Reber and Anna's brother, they're married. Hannah Reber and the brother, they're married. They showed up. They actually sat beside Anna, and the blonde went and sat kind of alongside the attorneys. Joanna, she came in. So did Jason, and I always get these boys confused because they look so much alike.
Y'all know I don't know their names. I normally would have to defer to Queen Bee because I don't know.
Jason and
oh, actually, wait. They texted it to me because I
have it down, but I can't find it.
Kira texted me. It was these names.
Okay, so it was Joanna, Jason, and James. They came in, sat behind media. They didn't come sit with Jim Bob. I never saw them even speak to Jim Bob, really. I didn't see Anna speak to Jim Bob. Now, Jim Bob sat right in front of me, and it was Hannah Reber and Anna's brother, and then Anna, and then David Waller, and then someone else that I'm not sure. I did not see Joanna talk to Jim Bob. It was really weird that they sat in the back, media.
Keep in mind, we're in the second row, front left, and certain other people were sitting in the back row, furthest corner right as possible. Like, it could not be further away.
Right, literally front row, and they're way back here. So it was really weird. And they could have come and stepped beside Jim Bob had they wanted to. There was room, but they didn't. So I don't really know what's up there. Now, when Josh came in, he had on a gray suit.
Same gray suit he wore during trial.
And even though he had a mask, you could tell he was smiling.
He had a beard.
Beard, slim, pale face, like he hasn't been out in the sun in a while.
Like he's in solitary confinement with 1 hour of
he definitely was pale, little slender, and beard. But he walks in and he immediately looks at Anna, and I saw her just shoot her hand up. So I thought she waved, but she actually did this, which I love you. So she shot Josh this sign, I love you. And he smiled. He sat down a couple of times. Austin was not with Joanna. Austin was not there at all today that I saw at all. Maybe he dropped her off, maybe he picked her up, but he never came to the courtroom. So she shot him that I love you signal. He sat down a couple of times. He looked. He
was painting the room to see who was in there.
Yes, and there was literally one time where he was looking at her, and even though she had a mask on, it literally looked like they was having a conversation. Like you could see his mask moving, her mask was moving. I'm like, how the heck are they doing this? It was like literally like 5 minutes solid almost. He's looking at her just kind of like this, and she's looking at him. And I can see her, you know what I'm saying? Because she's like this to me, so I can see the side of her face. She's looking at him, and I can tell that her mask is moving, and I can see his mask moving. And I'm like, I don't understand how they're having this conversation. It looks like they're having a conversation, but I don't know what the hell they're saying because they're covered up. They did not say what federal prison that he would be going to, but
there's three options. They requested 3 options. One is absolutely not going to happen because one is a medical facility. So that's where you would go.
And the judge said that. The judge was like, that's a medical facility. That's not going to work.
Yeah, that's where you go for like mental health needs or physical health needs. It's not just like a prison you're going to go to.
Right.
Specifically for health needs, but all of the options were Texas. So one was
Seaglesville,
and the other was Texarkana, and the third option doesn't matter because you won't go there. So we're looking at
it doesn't matter.
We're looking at Texarkana and Seaglesville.
Yeah, and that's what his team requested. That's where they requested that he be sent. So I'm just going to run my notes. Josh turned around, waved, raised eyebrows,
feel free to ask
the
questions.
gallery. Yeah, feel free to ask questions. So he scanned the gallery, looking to see who was there. I never seen him like lock eyes with Jim Bob, like lock. Like I saw him scan past him, but never like lock eyes with him. Like if that was me and you know my dad was front row or my mom was front row, I would acknowledge, lock eyes, tilt head, wave or something. And he could have, but he never locked eyes with his dad. It was kind of weird. At 9:22, Josh scanned gallery, nodding to someone in the back before turning his attention back to where Anna was, where they appeared to have a quick conversation despite the mask. 9:28, Josh and Anna lock eyes again for about 10 seconds. Josh seems happy looking at the gallery multiple times. 9:36, the judge comes in. He obviously announces while we're here, sentencing hearing. Judge tells Josh good morning, and Josh responds good morning. He tells Josh that he can remove his mask when speaking back to him. He asks Josh if he has taken any substance that would alter his way of thinking, right?
And the reason why they asked that is because he's about to ask him questions, and yes, you have to have sound mind. So, but it's pretty funny.
Because I'm like, he's been in jail.
Yeah,
I guess.
They just smuggle stuff in.
But he did. He's like, have you taken any substances? And Josh was like, no. And he asked, are you satisfied with your attorneys? And Josh said yes. And they did a brief, he said, we're going to do a brief procedural rundown. The judge lists the charges. He says, it was a jury trial, guilty verdict. both counts, but we'll get to that later. Both counts, court commissioned a pre-sentence investigation. So the court commissioned a pre-sentence investigation. That was February 11th. Office filed pre-sentence report. The government raised 22 objections in this pre-sentence report. The defense raised 22 objections in their pre-sentence report as well. Ironically, they both raised the same amount of objections. And this report basically is each side kind of asking what they would like the judge to, on this scale, what they want him to consider on the scale.
Well, with the
certain things.
So with the pre-sentencing investigation, they've got an officer of the court, a specialized appointed person that will, and it's the same parole officer that they had, or bond officer they had. I'm a little brain dead today, so bear with me.
I know.
But what they do is that person does a pre-sentencing investigation, and they look at their life, all the circumstances. They basically just dig into their life, and they get all these different aspects that you would consider for sentencing, whether that be how long you should get or treatment that you might need while you're in the correctional facility, aka prison. And they submit that report with their suggestion of treatment that they need and how long they should get and aspects of the crime, yada, yada, yada. And then both sides will take turns objecting to, they send in their objections, but then they, at sentencing, go over each objection and kind of argue it out to see where it's going to land you, which is what took so long for sentencing.
Yes, that's what took so long. They went over all the objections and the judge made a ruling on them. So the prisons are both in Texas, right?
Yes.
Both prisons would be in Texas. That he's obviously going to be going to one of them. They're both in Texas. Let me. The judge tells Duggar that his attorneys should have reviewed the pretrial sentencing documents with him. He asked Josh if they did, and Josh said yes.
All just the basic
stuff. Court has received sentencing memorandum from defense and prosecution and has received their responses. Judge says Josh has several letters written on his behalf. Judge says those letters are important because it gives him a holistic view of who Josh is outside of like these charges, public eye. Judge identifies letters for leniency from Anna Michelle, father-in-law, brother-in-law, who is a pastor, the neighbor, and the third-party custodian that he was living with, Mr. Reber. So,
but plot twist, at 8:30 last night, they filed another one, which is too late for him to read or consider. It is going to be on the record. It is going to be part of this court case's filing, but it hit the docket like 8:30 last night.
Yeah. So a new one came in last night, literally.
And it's the widow that's the widow that every single letter mentioned, but had not written a letter. But so then ironically.
Yeah. So this letter that came in late last night was from, so Josh had a friend who passed away at some point. And according to what everyone is saying and what the widow is saying, that when her husband passed away, Josh started taking care of her and her family financially by giving her like a couple $1,000s a month.
The people that are really into the Duggars will remember the Wilson family, and Clark Wilson was someone that was, I believe, highly involved in the church when all of these things were going on way back when, and was a friend of Jim Bob's. And then they obviously had a bunch of kids too, and the kids were in the same age realm, but it was Clark Wilson that died. And that's why I thought it was so weird that Josh would be giving the widow allegedly, supposedly $2,000 a month, because Clark Wilson, the man that passed away, the reason this woman is a widow, is friends with Jim Bob, or was friends with Jim Bob. So
why wouldn't Jim Bob be doing it rather than, I honestly would not be shocked if it was Jim Bob doing it, but they said it was Josh just to help him out.
Like, yeah, what tax benefit are we going to get from this? And
yeah. So The judge also talks about the Reber's letter, says it is very helpful because Josh lived with them. So the people that he lived with them while out on his bond, the fact that they wrote in a letter obviously speaks for something. This is a judge's statement, you guys. Also, there were people that wrote in that has known Josh since he was a kid. Judge that was important. Then the judge brought up the fact that there is also a victim impact statement that the mother of the victim from the Marissa files.
Yes. So the Marissa series is unfortunately a series that is well known. And with those cases, the victims, the parents of the victims, they can submit a victim impact statement, and it's on file for them to reference or use for cases that involve the material and unfortunately that victim. And so, yes, they quoted that, and they get petty with it later, but we'll come back to that.
Yeah, the Reber's letter obviously was asking for leniency, saying Josh was a good person. So yes, the judge, he mentions all these letters, and he talks about how important it is. It tells him about Josh when he was a kid, and Josh, living with these people, and how he helped the widow, and nobody knew. It wasn't public information.
Nobody knew, but it was in every letter.
Exactly. And then he says, and I also read the victim impact statement, which was the mother of the victim from the Marissa series. The judge called the letter heartbreaking.
I have an excerpt from it too, if we want to look at that.
Okay.
Let's see here.
That's a big mic. Thank you, everyone that's in the super chat, you guys. Laura, let me see. SoJo covers her face like a superhero. The mic is purposely huge.
Yes.
All right, Josh was a good person all the way up until the minute that he wasn't, which was fairly quickly.
I was about to say, at what point do you want to, how far back do you want to go?
Right.
Let's see.
Okay, while you're looking for that, I'll keep going.
Yeah, keep going.
So the judge says that he is pretty certain that he has identified all the material that's going to be helpful to him for today's sentencing. He asked the prosecution and the defense if they have anything left, or if he has left anything out, and they say no. The judge goes over. The judge goes over the counts and how each count, the receipt of CP and the possession of CP, how the lesser charge
gets dropped.
Dropped, essentially. He's going to dismiss the lesser charge, yeah.
And what they do is they charge them with both because they're wanting to have a greater chance of getting a conviction. So they'll charge with both. And in the event that they don't get one charge, they might get the other. So they get a conviction. Or if they come back with guilty on both counts like they did in this case, then they will drop the lesser included charge, which is what happened.
Yeah, he goes over that and basically explains that the possession charge is the lesser charge and it will be dropped. It'll be did he say vacated?
Vacated.
He says it's going to be vacated. And I think he actually said that was the jury decision.
So the jury came back with guilty on both counts. So when they came back with guilty on both counts and not just one count, you can't do that. So there's a double jeopardy clause, yada, yada, yada.
Yeah, they brought that up.
So they dropped the lesser included. So, and that was something that had been agreed upon since before trial. Like they knew from the get-go, because again, that's standard. They're going to charge with both, hope that they can get one of the charges. And if they get both, then they'll just drop one. It's just a standard thing. But all along it was known that, yes, they would drop the lesser included if it came back with guilty on both counts. Which
is what they did. So they dropped the lesser version. So really, when you look at it, I've noticed a lot of people saying what all he got was 12 and a half years. He was only being sentenced for one charge, which was a terrible charge. It was receiving CP. But the judge took in so many factors and he really broke them down. And we're going to go over. I know I have a ton of notes on it. Do you have your notes with us too? Or anything that I may be missing?
They're out there, but
you can grab them.
I can grab them, but I might be able to just remember it. So it just depends.
All right. So the judge then says they're going to take up the objections. Well, actually, I skipped this. The prosecution asked the judge do not dismiss it. Ask the judge not to dismiss the possession charge without prejudice.
So what that means is if something's dismissed, they'll dismiss something with prejudice or without prejudice, and one can be reevaluated and one is like no. So to make this in more simple terms, if something were to be dismissed with prejudice, then that's done. You can't resue that person. You can't, go back into it. But if it is without,
then they could possibly.
That's vice versa.
Or maybe we got it backwards when we have it backwards.
We've been up.
I got like 3 hours of sleep last night. I don't know if you slept at all.
No, I didn't. So we're struggling.
Someone asked, could the judge make the decision to send him anywhere and not take the recommendations of his defense?
He could, but he was happy to take it, though. He wrote it down. He was happy to take it. And here's our statement for the mom. Okay,
so the mother of the victim.
The mother of Marissa, so to speak.
This is her statement, that her victim impact statement. She said, I can find no words to express the fury I feel at those who participate in this evil, or my scorn for any attempt to minimize the responsibility by feeble claims that the crime was victimless. My daughter is a real person. She was horribly victimized to provide this source of entertainment. She is exploited anew each and every time an image of her of her suffering is copied, traded, or sold. While the crime is clearly conscienceless, it is hardly victimless. I asked my daughter what she wanted most to say to the judge, and her request was, please don't let them pretend like no one is getting hurt. She had some words for Josh as well. Don't you know that no one should do that to little girls? Don't you know that it hurts? As a mother of a child victimized by this crime, I would ask that the court take into consideration the damage done by this heartless crime to my daughter and others like her, including those children who still wait for someone to rescue them from their exploitation and have no one here today to speak for them, and impose a sentence that takes into the account the full impact of the crime on the victims. Now, do you know how old her daughter was, or a range? Because I'm not
around
sure.
The time.
Yeah, around the time.
I think she's 7 or 8.
7 or
at
okay.
The time.
Okay.
But it's a very popularly traded thing, and I do not know off the top of my head how long it's been around, but she's not that age now.
Got you. So she was about 9. Did you say 9?
7.
You said
7, 8.
Sorry, 7, 8 when it happened. And that the way she said that to Josh, what would you tell Josh? Don't you know you're not supposed to do that to little girls? Don't you know it hurts? That makes sense with her being 7.
Yes. Also, dismissal with prejudice means the plaintiff cannot refile the same claim against the court. Just to clarify, since
we didn't know.
my brain cells were not rubbing together there.
All right, so let's continue. So the judge says they're going to take up the remaining objections, presenting a report resolve. No. So they have a report obviously outlining all the objections. Each side has 21 objections. The judge said he wanted to state and be clear that the court will be relying on evidence that was entered into the trial, evidence that was entered at the sentencing hearing and the evidentiary hearing, rather than relying on any from the pretrial sentencing hearing, which I don't know why he said that, because he did rely on Bobby Holt's testimony.
But here's the difference, though, is you have this trial hearings because that's not in front of a jury.
She testified that at trial too.
She had the pre-trial hearing to see if it would go in, and it got approved. So, that's why.
No, I don't think Josh or Anna understand the magnitude of their crimes. Let me tell you guys, when the government was up, like telling the judge, we want 20 years and this is why this is the worst of the worst. Josh, for the most time, was like just writing, like paying nobody any mind most of the time. But when that attorney would say things like that about Josh, about it being disgusting and sadistic, Josh would literally look at him like this. And it was almost like if looks could kill, like it was like he was mean mugging him, like shooting daggers at this man. And I was like, wow, in open court, when he looks at this man, he's looking at him and almost like, really? That's what you're going to say about me? Like I've maintained my innocence this whole time, and this is what you're going to say about me? It was really strange because
you're
found guilty.
He's got a little toot against Dustin Roberts, and that's been going on. So if Carly Marshall's up there, he doesn't pay her any mind. Imagine that. Sure, it's obvious why.
The female attorney, he pays her no mind.
William Clayman, but he does not appear to care for Dustin Roberts, which is understandable because Dustin Roberts ain't playing no games.
Yeah. According to an article on the New York Post, the DOJ said the video was a young girl of 3 months old. There's multiple content that
there's 7 videos.
7 videos there that the judge took into account, not 600 images, but just a little bit below that. I think it was like
590.
Like 590 or something like that.
And you need 600 to get
a certain level.
Yeah, like a level 5 is going to be 600, then you'll get a level 4. So they were 10 images short of getting the level 5 enhancement. So with 590 images, they got the level 4 enhancement for the amount of images, which is funny because the defense was trying to argue that they had substantially less, like 120 something images.
Yes.
And then he starts talking to Judge Brooks, and Judge Brooks is like, so you concede you had over 500 images.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was like, that didn't. The math was math in there, and that did not go well for you.
Well, he's going to file an appeal. They stated that.
Yes.
They stated.
They said that in the sentencing memorandum last week. They said that they will exercise their right to file an appeal, and today they made that more than clear. So much so that Galifan said it will be filed within the next 14 days, which they have to do. They have a deadline to submit an appeal following sentencing, and so their formal appeal will be filed.
Yes,
within the next 2 weeks.
And that's also why Josh did not make a statement, because Josh had the right to make a statement, to the judge, ask for leniency, but he did not because, well, I would imagine if he stands up and asks the judge for leniency,
he's got the right to plead the 5th, and so anything that he gets up and says might appear guilty.
Yeah.
And affect his appeal.
Yeah. So do you think we should go over all these objections or just get to the judge and how he made his ruling?
What do y'all want to do?
Okay, so we have all the objections that they went over and how the judge ruled on them. We can do that, or we can go straight to the judge telling us how he made his ruling. He brought in several case laws. He brought up several case laws of cases similar and how they were sentenced. Judge and his ruling. Okay, what does the wrench mean after names? A moderator. If you have a wrench, you're a moderator to the channel. All right, so we're going to skip all these rulings, which we'll do. I'll do a video, and I'm sure you will as well, right?
Yeah, I'll do a video and of course a podcast, because season 1's all about the Duggar case, and I'm done. I'm almost done. There is light at the end of the tunnel now. And we definitely, I can't even speak English. I need a mega pint of coffee. We will definitely both go over everything. Mm-hmm. But again, we sat there from 9:30 until 3:30-ish. So we would be on here for hours if we tried to go over a full day, essentially, if we tried to go over everything with you guys.
I do want to bring this up. Which one was this on? This was on objection number 5, which was on page 98. It was Josh Duggar's team. No. Level 4 enhancement, but I don't have everything written down. Sole basis for enhancement arises out of Marissa series, not grappling with government evidence of what series
That's
portrays,
based on the numbers,
but what exactly was downloaded from this file. So, okay, the Marissa series contained a lot of content. So Josh Duggar side was saying, who cares what all it, well, not who cares what all it contains, but you can't judge him based off all of what it contains, but only what was downloaded. The series has 65 images, but that is not what was successfully downloaded.
But King Clint at lunch today, because we were talking about this, it was Marissa, as it says on there, is the Marissa zip file, which means you obtained it in its entirety.
Got it.
So technically, he got all of the images because it's a zip file.
Yeah, I actually
so
have that here.
He
It says, I guess Josh Duggar's team says the government was not specific, and in this, as far as like how many it was, and then the government got up and said the series was in its entirety, like it was the 65 images. The judge says the judge tells Josh Duggar's team, because Josh Duggar's team is trying to argue how many images was downloaded,
because they've got it up, like we said, level 5, level 4 is what it ended up on, but they're trying to argue it down as much as possible. Which some arguments would be okay, but like it's a zip. Yes.
So the judge, Josh Duggar's attorney, is basically trying to argue the images. And the judge tells Josh Duggar's attorney, he says, the evidence is on the record. And the judge asked Gelfand, he says, do you believe a male?
No, this is for the sadistic masochistic.
This is triggering. This may be triggering.
Yes.
The judge asked Josh Duggar's attorney, he says, do you believe that a male, an adult male, penetrating a child is considered sadistic? Because that was a part of the objection, is the wording, sadistic, and then the amount of files.
He really tried to argue it, though. He was generally speaking, yes.
Generally speaking, yes.
He embarrassed himself.
He said, generally speaking, yes, but, and I'm like, what?
And Judge Brooks was like, no, sir. No, sir. Judge Brooks was like...
Yep, he said, but Marissa content is 65 still images, and no evidence shows how many exactly were downloaded. And then the judge brings up the title and says, child performs oral sex on adult male. Do you believe it to be sadistic? And he says, general proposition, yes. And the judge says, and then he goes in to try to explain, general proposition, yes, but.
He was literally arguing it.
Yes, and the judge says, I hear the words, you said it 3 times, but I don't understand. I think it's frivolous. And I was like.
I was fighting for my life sometimes, and to make it worse, like I'm either looking at you or like looking at Bobby like, please don't let me laugh in here. And I'm over here like.
Because he got him there. He's like,
you said it 3 times, and it's not making any sense.
I asked you if you thought this type of situation was sadistic. You say, generally speaking, yes, but we don't know what all he saw. We don't know what all he downloaded. 65 images, but we don't know if he got all of them. So we really can't say what he's seen and how sadistic it is, you know? And he's like, no.
But
this is the title. Is it sadistic?
Well, hear how stupid this whole argument is. Okay, so let's say there's 65 images. Essentially, there's a sequence of things going on. These images are in these things. They're mostly going to be in a sequence, in a series. So they're mostly going to very much resemble each other. So whether he got 10, 20, or all 65, they're all in the same series and going to be resembling the same type stuff. And to have the audacity to say, well, generally speaking, like, no, we're literally talking about one file. And I'm asking you, do you think that's that? You say yes, but no, but not for this case. I said no.
I wanted to point that out because that was one of the times that Judge Brooks really like called Josh Duggar's attorney out. Like, there was another time as well, but that was during the arguments over the objections. Let's see.
Which objection are you thinking about?
I was just going to try to get to how he made the decision.
One big objection that we should talk about is the Ashley Madison objection and the pre-sentencing investigation. And basically with that, that got brought up in the pre-sentencing investigation. And essentially, he was on Ashley Madison. He was cheating on his wife. And he admitted to being addicted to pornography. So
in a public statement.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the defense filed a motion to get that nixed. And prosecution was like, no. It's not illegal to cheat, but here's this man saying he's a great family man, he's a great father, and is cheating on his wife and has openly admitted to having an addiction to pornography. So what had happened was of course, Judge Brooks was like, no, it's not illegal to cheat on your spouse, so we can't use that against him for sentencing. However, the admission of being addicted to pornography, and he said, assuming that to be adult consensual pornography, that's something that should be in the pre-sentencing report because it's something that can be used while he's in the prison system for therapy and treatment. Essentially, it's something that from a psychology standpoint, they want to have on the record so that they can know how to treat and deal with that. It won't be used against him for sentencing.
It also goes to his morals as well.
But they nixed the Ashley Madison cheating part and kept the admission of
past behaviors,
being addicted to pornography.
Yeah, and they kept past behaviors on there as well, right? Didn't they?
Well, that would be a past behavior.
Well, for the sexual behaviors as far as the girls. They kept that on there, didn't they?
So the defense tried to argue that the pattern of behavior involving
it was relevant.
The Jane Doe, they tried to say that's not relevant. That was 20 years ago. He was 15 then, and so too much time has passed. He's a juvenile himself, yada, yada, yada. Case law got cited, facts got dropped, and Judge Brooks said, we're leaving it in.
Yeah, Judge Brooks said, because they're like, it was 20 years. He was a kid himself. And Judge Brooks said, I take that into account, that it's been 20 years. He was, 14, 15 years old. He said, but 20 years later, the content that he's downloading and looking at, the age range is the same age as the victims.
Yeah.
From when he committed the sexual abuse. So it shows a pattern of what he prefers. That's what the judge used, basically. It shows his preference when it comes to CP. Maybe Josh, and the judge even said, we don't know for sure if Josh went 20 years without looking at anything. Maybe he just didn't get caught. The judge said that. He said maybe he just didn't get caught. But what we do know is from the time that we aren't exactly sure, those 20 years, when we know that he did, the stuff that he was looking up, the age range is the same age range as his sisters when he abused them. So it goes to show his preference when it comes to CP.
What I loved was, I love a bias check. And Dustin Roberts was like, if this was tax evasion or drugs from 20 years ago, like, okay. But we're talking about crimes against children, and you have the same preference 20 years later. So this isn't tax evasion or drugs.
Actually, he is being mandated to attend therapy. That is one of the stipulations when he is released for his probation. He's going to be on probation for 20 years when he's released, and he will have to go to therapy, and he will have to pay for it. All right. There's so many notes here. Now
you know why I have all those books.
I know. SoJo made me a book. But I even have notes of I was constantly looking at Josh, and he was writing most of the time, just writing, but there were moments where he would look at the government or the judge there was when they talked about Anna being a great wife and sticking by his side, he laughed and he looked back at her, and Anna shook her head, and the two people beside her was like, Like everybody's like, yep, she's been a good wife, sticking by your side, you know. And another thing that the judge said is, you have this wife who's stuck by your side, who's loved you through this, but yet you were not considering your wife and your children when you committed these crimes.
Sure did.
Mm-hmm.
And he said you didn't care about the scandal.
Exactly. None like you didn't care about the embarrassment. You didn't care about any of it. You know, you did not think about your wife or your children when you committed these crimes. And then the government, when the government was making their arguments, the government said, I heard this quote that said, you're the type of man you are, you're only as good as the way you act when nobody's watching. Basically, like, if you are good around people, you know, how are you when no one's watching? And it was a quote that says something to that effect. And then the who was it? Which one was it?
Talking about prosecutors?
Yeah, it was Roberts. It was Dustin Roberts. He said, I heard a quote that really made me think of this trial. You're only as good as what nobody sees you to be.
Like, you're only as good of a man that you are when no one's watching.
And he said,
you had covenant eyes watching though and got around it.
Yep. He said you had covenant eyes watching, and you still got around it. You know, you did everything that you could. I don't know. You did everything that you could to avoid detection. All right, let's see. Let me get back to that. Those are a few things that I wanted to point out. Okay, let's see. This was really hard to understand. And when I first started taking the notes and he first started breaking it down, I didn't understand it. But as we went through it, I began to understand it a little bit more. So at 11:30, we took a 40-minute break, which was not nearly long enough because we did not even have time to eat our lunch. We ran across the street and we went
like 100 yards away.
It wasn't, we ordered food, but by the time it was like we had to be back, and we were like headed out the door, and they brought our food to us in boxes, and we were like, thanks, peace out. We resumed at 12:10, and the judge starts telling Josh about the process he has to go through to sentence him. He says that it's a 2-step federal sentencing. Step 1 is the guideline range. He said the guideline range must take a guideline range into consideration. It is advisory, like it's you're advised to use this range. You don't absolutely have to stick by it, but it gives you a general range of how you should sentence based on points and levels. That's
a federal thing. So the feds, they have a point system for sentencing. So, you know, you've got different levels based on the type of crime you did, how bad it, for this case, for example, do you have a prior history? Do you have prior criminal history? How many images were there? What was in the images? How did you obtain them? There's different factors. And based on those points, they have that point system. And that's how you end up. Like, for example, Josh Duggar was a 39. So they know that this time to this time is what they would recommend for that.
Right. He said that the court is not bound to use it 100%, but kind of taken into consideration. Step 2 requires considered several other sentencing factors. So step 2 requires several other sentencing factors. Into case facts, federal sentencing should not be a one-size-fits-all. Step 2 helps customize the sentence to the particular individual. So guideline calculation, it's a two-part component. The first part is the offense level, which is level 1, 2, 3, 4, goes up to level 5, right? Does it go up to level 5? Okay. And then the second part is criminal history.
By the way, let's just verify something here. Criminal history. Have you been
arrested,
charged, convicted? Not did you do some shitty stuff that you should have been? Have you been arrested, charged, convicted? If you've not been arrested, charged, convicted, that's not going to be a criminal history. Okay. I understand that. You're probably like, that makes no sense. That's what? There's a difference between doing something illegal and actually being arrested, catching a charge.
Yeah. Now, when it goes to the second part, criminal history, he can't. This is only charges, like she said, something you have been arrested and actually charged for. However, he could take into account past behavior because that was written up in the sentencing memorandum of things that the prosecution wanted, but it doesn't go to the criminal history. Like it's different things. So in one aspect, he can take that into consideration because it shows a history. But in this other separate aspect, the second part, which is criminal history, he's not supposed to because so he still could take that into consideration. In a
like pattern
aspect.
of behavior can be used. And now that's in a federal court. Like they can bring in past behavior to show patterns of behavior in federal court and state. You wouldn't be able to do that until sentencing. But with the feds, that's something you can do. So they are allowed to bring it up for pattern behavior. But as far as point system, like you get points for criminal history. So he's going to get 0 points, be a level 1, 0 points, or a level 0. He gets 0 points for being never charged and convicted of a crime. Now, the past behavior is going to be a pattern of behavior, and that can be used and considered when making the decision. And it most certainly was. It got him up to being it was a level 5. But that being said, his criminal history was a 0. That was good for him.
Right. So the judge talks about as to the offense, he says it was not hands-on. So when the offense is hands-on, obviously it's considered aggravating and your points go up, or it's considered a higher level actually. They kept talking about this 2G 2.2 system or 2G 2.2.
2G 2.2. Yeah. I wrote it down so many times. It's the only reason why I know, because I can't remember anything.
So he says where we're starting, the offense level is Josh is at a 22 start. Josh is at a 22 in the beginning. So the first thing that they take in at the start of the 22 points where he's at, then they take in the minors and the fact that they were prepubescent. Is that how you say it?
Prepubescent.
Hadn't hit puberty yet. The fact that they were that young, they had not went through puberty yet, was taken into consideration. Which he considered it an aggravating offense and a level 4 enhancement. The next enhancement being applied due to the pattern of sexual abuse or exploitation of a minor, that was level 5. Level 4 enhancement because the number of images being used. So this was a big discussion here. They got up and they talked about it again and they argued over the images, and they ended up 590 images. That's where the judge ended up saying this is where we're at. Now, that's level 4 enhancement. If it would have been 600 or more, it would have been a level 5 enhancement, and Josh would have got more time. He would have got more time. That one would have been a level 5.
So don't say Brooks is not fair. He said
he's literally, you guys. I was actually shocked.
I told you
he was literally point. And so when I see everybody saying like, "Oh, he should have got 20 years," I was like, it makes sense. Though, like me as a mom and just anybody.
But people don't understand. Judge Brooks is beyond respectful, and that's why I told people, I was like, look, if he gets 6 years, I will know without a doubt that that's what he should have got, because Judge Brooks is beyond respectful. He does.
So I don't know him. I mean, you live here, you know him.
His court, like he runs a very respectable and ethical and fair courtroom, and like.
Now, if Josh would have got 6 years, I would have been questioned. I would have been like,
what? If he got 6 years, well, if you'd sat there and heard everything you heard today and it ended up being 6 years, you'd be like, okay, well, it is what it is, because he does that. So
yes, Queen T, that's true. So when the way he broke it all down, now as a mother, and I'm sure SoJo, not even as a mother, when we just think about it outside of listening to what we were told today by the judge, like all this time, I'm like, he deserves 20 years, 20 years, 20 years, 20 years. I'm like, 20 years. He needs 20 years.
I think about it from a legal criminal justice standpoint. So from a legal criminal justice standpoint, like my personal opinion is yeah, if you're committing crimes against children, you're a piece of shit and you're wasting your oxygen supply. However, that's SoJo personal.
Mm-hmm.
SoJo is like, from a legal standpoint, this is the crime, this is the time, these are the other cases like it. So yeah, it's definitely, it'll play on your mind. Also, and I think this is a big issue with this particular case, is I don't know the Duggars don't care about the Duggars. So like, I am looking at this as just another case that I'm covering. Whereas I feel like everyone else like really is invested in these people's lives. And so they've got like a personal.
I don't think the kids can visit the jail because I don't think kids can visit a federal prison, from my understanding. But we're going to continue going over the points, and then I'll ask questions, or I'll answer you guys' questions, and she will as well. Okay, so at that point, so we started off at 22, and now we're at 39 with everything that we just went over. The next chapter of guidelines. Okay. So at 39, he says, okay, right now we're at 39. He said, and had you accepted responsibility in some degree, it would have been beneficial to you. I don't know if he would have knocked points off. Or
He said you have a right, obviously you have a right to make the government
prove
their case. And everyone does. And I do believe that. Mm-hmm. Everyone should make them prove their case. We have to hold them accountable. Accountability is a big thing in the system as far as I'm concerned. But he's like, you have every right to come to court and make them prove their case. But that being said, you've already been convicted. And yes, you have the right to appeal it, but you are literally taking zero accountability on it. Like, you admitted to the entire planet that you molested your sisters. But in my courtroom, you say that's not true.
Exactly. So that was, and when we got to 39, when we were at 39, that's what the judge brought up. Basically, he was like, next chapter of guidelines, here we would have awarded adjustments. So he would have adjusted at 39, taken off some points. Had you accepted some sort of responsibility, but that doesn't apply to you now because you didn't. So even though you admitted to the world that you sexually abused your sisters, you admitted to the world that you cheated on your wife and you had an addiction, you would not admit it in my courtroom. So therefore, you don't qualify for that adjustment. Next was criminal history. And the judge was like, Josh Duggar had no priors. Criminal history, as far as that, he's a category 1. Josh, I noticed he was like vigorously taking notes when all this was going on.
Yeah, is he really making notes, or is he pulling an Amber Heard over there with his little
maybe
like
he's pulling a Johnny Depp? You know, maybe he's like color and judge.
I'm here for it either way. I get curious.
So then he said, the judge said we're at 39 points. We're at an interstate level, and he says normally with 39 points, the maximum with 39 points is anywhere from 262 months to 327 months. I can't do the math in my head. Can anybody figure that math out? So he says that at 39 points, the maximum is, I guess that would be minimum to maximum, 262 to 327 months. He said rules, set, info, guidelines cannot exceed the maximum. He said the government recommended 240 months. So by the points where he was at, there was a maximum, which was 327, but the prosecution was asking for 240, which was 20 years. So he was not going to exceed what the prosecution was even asking for, despite these guidelines showed that he could have had a higher maximum. And then Josh Duggar's team, or he spoke about Josh Duggar's team and what they wanted. Josh Duggar's team recommended 5 years. And probation for the rest of his life. That was what they asked for 5 years with the possibility of probation for the rest of his life, $50K to $250K fine. Was that Josh Duggar's team?
Well, so here's the thing. Here's what everyone needs to know. The defense in every single case ever that we ever cover is going to ask for the bare minimum sentence, bare minimum fine, all of that. And in every single case that's ever going to get covered, the prosecution is going to ask for the max. That's how that works.
Okay, yeah.
So, like,
they're going to ask for minimum, they're going to ask for max.
That's just what they're going to do. So, naturally, defense is like, do 5 years. And they gave their case based on previous case law. But you know what got me is they had the audacity to get up there and say that they had exigent circumstances for the family and then base that off to previous cases. And they put that in their sentencing memorandum when they filed it. But they basically compared someone that had a wife and kid and father and disabled grandmother living with them and a single mom with 2 very small children and victimless crimes like, drug possession, and tried to compare those extended circumstances to Josh. And he doesn't have extended circumstances. He has 7 kids. And by the way, one of the best parts of the day was when Roberts was like,
Anna can work.
Last time I checked, Anna was just fine and can get a job. She can work.
Because Anna's letter for leniency was that he's a good father, he's a great guy, and me and my children rely on him financially. So the judge was like, I am taking into account that Josh is he has a wife and children that he takes care of financially. He's responsible for them and he takes care of them. And the government, what was his name again? I cannot remember his name.
Dustin
Roberts gets up and he literally says, the last time I checked, she is more than capable. Anna, his wife, he doesn't name her. He says, the last time I checked, his wife is more than capable to get a job and take care of the children financially without Josh Duggar. Yeah, I was like, oh, okay. So when the judge was going over, like, the government is recommending 240 months. Oh, I got this wrong. So the government was requesting 240 months, which was 20 years, probation for either 5 years or the rest of his life, a fine between $50K to $250K. When the judge was saying all those things, Anna was nervously like rubbing her hands like this. She was like,
and she's got a foot tap.
And she's got her foot going. Her foot's just like bing, 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 bing. I don't know if that's like a nervous tick, because I noticed she wasn't always doing it, but she was doing it at moments where if that was me, I probably would have been tense and nervous and like, oh crap, The government recommended I don't know what that means there. 100 per count, only one count. Oh, $100.
Oh, it's $100. So there's like $100 charge.
There's several fines involved. Yeah.
But there's like $100 for the count. So since he had 2 counts, one's dropped. So he's got $100 just for that one count. Then he had $5,000 charge, $15,000 charge, and a $30,000. That he had basically he has a total of $50,000 that he'll have to pay, and that was the only thing he was pissed about.
Yep, they definitely seemed irritated at the fines.
Like he was like,
and he has to pay that while he's still in prison. Like he has to start paying the fines. I think he said it immediately, didn't he?
Well, they also can garnish your wages and stuff. Like it's 10% of your wages, and they can garnish that. But yeah, it's $50K.
So he says these are the government's ranges. These are the guideline range that the court takes into consideration. Other factors, 2-step court obligation, look at the totality, facts, and circumstances, take in to account personal history. The court also required the court also basically talked about they compared similar defendants, like case laws where the person kind of committed the same crimes, and it's kind of similar to what Josh Duggar did. How long did they get? So he said another factor is the Congress instruct the district courts that the sentence should reflect several things: the seriousness of the offense. It should promote respect for the law. the sentence must be just, and it should also be a deterrent, not only from the defendant, when he gets out of jail, for him to be like, yeah, I don't want to do that again, but also just regular everyday people to be like, oh, he got caught doing that, and this is what he's got, so I don't want to do it,
You would think that going to prison would be a deterrent in general, but
right.
Clearly people aren't scared.
So basically it's to keep, Josh from getting out and committing a crime again, and anyone else from committing
from wanting to do it, like, oh, I don't want to go back to jail for a super long time, and man, I need to think twice before I do this because I'm not trying to go for 20 years.
Oh no. He said another thing is the need to protect the public, and another thing is to keep Josh from reoffending. And then they brought up correctional treatment.
So you can do things while you're being incarcerated. Mm-hmm. Oh, Lord, help me with this brain fog. While you're being incarcerated, there's things you can do. Therapy, work programs within there, training dogs. There's a bunch of different things you can do. And doing those things, earn you thumbs up, a smiley face sticker, whatever.
Yeah.
The prison.
Great job.
That's just what they do. So, if he would do that, that'd be one thing. It's
he's not trying to, though.
No, and it's the feds. So you're not going to get parole. Like, you're going to do the whole time. You're going to do at least 80%. Honestly, he's going to do the whole thing. Now, he is going to get 6 months time served, as he very well should, because he's been deprived of his rights for 6 months and been in solitary confinement. So he got 12 years, 8 months, 7 months, 8 months, 12 years, 8 months, 12 years, 7 months.
12 years, 7 months.
12 years, 7 months. But he's going to get 6 months time served. So he got 12 years.
Yes. So that's where we're at. Now, after that, the judge goes over all these things with Josh. And then he asked the attorneys, do you guys have any recommendations? And both sides obviously have written a memorandum. He asked Josh, or he tells Josh, he says, you will have the opportunity to address the court. He says you don't have to, but you definitely can. And then the government starts with their recommendations. So Dustin Roberts gets up and he says, our recommendation is 250 months, 20 years due to the seriousness. These videos contain rape, violent acts. We need to consider Josh's background, his history. We need to take into consideration our need to protect specifically children from Mr. Duggar. Also, we need to take into account that he refused to accept accountability. All this time, Josh is boop, 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 as the attorney's going over these things. When he brings up Josh not taking accountability, Josh stops writing and looks over at him, like shooting daggers at him. Like, despite the fact that he was wearing a mask, you could just tell by the way he looked at him. He was looking at him as if like, how dare you talk about me that way?
Well, LB, he's God's anointed one.
He's the anointed one. That's right. So wild. And this kind of shocked me, and I didn't get it, but I don't know. Robert said that he does not want the reporters who were there to think that he was asking for Josh to get special treatment. And I'm like, well, I don't think so. You asked him for 20 years. I don't think you're doing that. He did bring that up. He said, this is not your everyday average case. Josh Duggar is, he was raised on television, and there's reporters here. And I don't want anyone sitting out there to think that I am asking Josh be getting special privileges. So 20 years, anyways, that's when he made the quote. Oh, this is when he made another quote. He said, please don't let them come into court and act like no one is being hurt. But I actually think that's from the Marissa series victim. The Roberts then speaks. No, this is the prosecution. Continuing, he speaks on the victims being abused. He says each time someone looks at the photo, they are being reoffended. Josh stares at him again. And he said Josh Duggar gets pleasure out of reoffending these victims. He got pleasure out of it. He's like, every time you look at one of these files, you download and you look at it, you are reoffending this victim that has already been victimized. And Josh got pleasure in doing that. Now, Josh was literally like fixated on him. And I also looked at Anna really quick, and Anna looked at Josh to see what Josh's reaction was to that, to the government saying that Josh got pleasure out of re-victimizing the victims. She looked at Josh. Josh was looking at Robert, and she showed no emotion or anything. She just looked at him to see, what his reaction was. Roberts talks about the effort that Josh took to view the content, cover it up, how he wanted so badly to view these images that he figured out a way around the covenant eyes. Josh looked up again, watched this man for about 2 minutes as he talked about covenant eyes. And then he brings up the Marissa series. He says the victim was locked in a trigger warning. He says the victim was locked in a cage, covered in blood, with things wrote on her body. Mind you, she's like 7 years old.
If y'all are on my podcast, y'all have already been tortured through this. So
yeah, but I feel the need to give out a trigger warning. So he said, Marissa series, the victim who was like 7 years old, was locked in a cage, covered in blood, with things spelled out on her body. Hurt me, slut. Josh was still staring at the government during this. I'm not even gonna lie, this was where I got emotional. Like hearing that, I literally had to like take a second because I'm like,
well, I always feel bad because I'm not an emotional person. Like just in general, I'm not an emotional person. But on top of that, like I do deal with these kinds of things and worse every day. It takes a certain type of mindset and person to do this. But I'm saying, I remember being in trial and certain things were seen and discussed, and I, having prepared for the case, already knew what was coming, but everyone around me was crying, and I was like, ooh, I don't know what to do because I'm like one of the only ones not crying. And then when I heard like you were like, ooh, and I was like, oh no. And then I felt bad, and then I could tell somebody over here on to the left of us felt that way too. And I was like, oh no.
That was tough, man. That was tough, because even though I knew about the Daisy destruction, I've heard about Marissa files. That's the first time I've heard them explain it in that detail. Now, I know about Daisy destruction, and when I first heard about Daisy destruction, that was tough. But this is the first that I've heard about 7-year-old in a cage with those things written on her body.
Well, and like when on the podcast, I don't believe that you should downplay the severity of a crime, but you also want to think about the way you present it. So my listeners heard the details that make you realize how terrible I'm not trying to downplay the severity of the crime. So I'm very honest with my listeners and viewers about that. But at the same time, you're trying to be respectful to whatever ability can be with those types of things. But what I'm always trying to tell people is there's a difference between a courtroom and like private. So like you get in there and it's like, and you're like, damn, they just said that like it was nothing. And it's like, we're down to business. Like we got to like, you know what I mean? So that's one thing too. It's another thing to hear it and like try to grasp it and you hear it in a certain way. It's another thing to hear it where it's like, to the point, this is that, no bars hold on your neck. And you're just like, wow, what?
Yeah, it hit me. I was like, oh my goodness, like this is terrible. This is terrible. Now what's so crazy is I'm having a moment. Like when he brings up that girl cage, all that, I'm like, my eyes are watering and I'm trying to like get myself together. Because literally Jim Bob's right here, like I don't want to start.
Look, Jim Bob is this far from us.
Yeah.
Like if we both turn this way,
we would be like shoulder to shoulder almost.
Like that is like this is how far like if she was faced that's like we're right there.
What's crazy though is as I'm trying to like rein in my emotions, Anna bends down and grabs her coffee and takes a sip of her coffee and puts it back on the ground.
And as I told y'all, everything in court is super loud. People don't realize it. Like I am scared to death.
Did your thing just die?
Did my computer just die? It might have.
I think so. Was that my live or no? That's just my back end, isn't it?
Yeah, it shouldn't have. Hold on.
Make sure I'm still live. I think that's just my back end. Maybe not. That may have ended mine.
Well, let's see. I can't move.
Nope, I'm still on. Sorry, guys.
Okay,
her computer went dead. I'll just use my phone to read.
Might have to mute it.
Yeah.
But like I said, we're sleepless doing the best we can. Perfection is imperfection, guys. y'all already know how things work around here, but
I was mind blown that's what that they say that about the girl. I'm like, oh my goodness. And she bends down, takes your coffee, takes a swig, puts it back down. And I'm like, no emotion. Several times when they spoke about, the 2-month-old, I shoot her a look because she's got a child that's like 2 months old or something. I don't remember, a few months old. I immediately look because I'm like, surely something is gonna, like, when you hear about child victims, especially if you have a child that age, you just instantly, think about your child. So when I heard it, I was like, holy crap. She's got a child that age. I'm looking for her to see any sense of disgust, like putting her child in the position of these victims. Nothing. And I was just like, wow, this is crazy. This is so wild.
Well, and another thing, and this is what I try to tell my followers, listeners all the time. I just call them the crew, the shithead crew, my besties, my fam bam. We're all besties. But I'm saying that I'm always trying to tell people, like, you can't judge what's going on in a courtroom because the people involved in the case have heard this stuff a million times over and over again for a very, very, very long time.
Yeah.
So they've already dealt with all this stuff every single day for a very long time before you ever get in there. Whereas when you go to a courtroom and you're hearing it, it might be the first time you've heard it. And so you're having all these raw emotions, and then you're comparing raw emotions to people that have heard it every day for 4 years. And so it's like, it makes them look like heartless or more guilty, but you got to keep in mind, like, it's different when they've lived it and heard it for years, and then like you're just hearing it for the first time. Because I feel like that goes on in every single courtroom, but I'm always trying to remind people, like, it is such a contrast from, well, and also it's different. Like, you've been covering them for how long, and like then you actually see them as like human beings. It's like, wow, they're like right there.
Yeah, it's definitely different because I even told SoJo, I was like, I might try to speak to you. I might be like praying for y'all, Jim Bob.
When he sat down in front of us, and we were so in love.
I say something, And he sat down. She's like, do it.
I was like, go on.
She's like, now's your chance. I'm like, all right, let's continue. So I definitely made note of the fact that she bent down and grabbed her coffee and took a swig because I was just kind of dumbfounded by it. After that, the government discussed the type of content that Josh preferred. They said it was sadistic, the worst of the worst. They brought up, they said the most, how did they say this? Accurate testimony, basically to point out Josh's preferred or his history. They said Bobby Holt had she's the most accurate person that could testify because Josh admitted to her. He told her what he did to his sisters. They said Miss Holt's testimony while looking at Josh. I was going to hold it that way. Can I twist it?
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
They said Miss Holt testified on the stand while looking at Josh and telling him that she still loves him, you know.
Mommy Dearest didn't show up at all again. I just saw that comment.
Yeah, Michelle was not there.
Imagine that. My thing was, she gave up the last chance to see her son for the next 12 years, not in shackles behind bars or glass.
Yep.
So typically people show up for that because it's like the last, last time you go see him not in a jumpsuit.
When the government is talking about Miss Bobby Holt testifying and, saying, yes, Josh admitted these things to me, and then saying, but, I still love Josh because I've known him since he was born. Like, this is difficult for me. Anna, once again, looked at Josh to see if he had any reaction. Josh was looking at Dustin Roberts. Jim Bob's face and ears were bright red. At times, he would turn mainly this way, and you could see, like, his face was, like, really bright red. The government compares him being 14, 15 years old. The essay against his sisters, they say 20 years later, watching CP, they compare it to tax fraud and drug use. If someone was to commit tax fraud and not get caught, 20 years later commit it again and get caught, it goes to show a pattern, repeated behavior. It would matter. And he says that the evidence shows that Josh Duggar is likely to reoffend, brings up the need to protect the children. Court has to protect the public. Josh refuses to accept any responsibility, won't acknowledge. Oh, he said, and he will not acknowledge the fact that he's attracted to minors. He's like, he won't acknowledge the fact that he's attracted to minors. And I was like, wow, that's crazy. He worded it like that. That's what it is.
Well, yeah, there's this new term floating around, and I'm not a fan of it because people on here are going to freak out. There's this new term that's floating around. I do not like it. I think terms should be as vulgar as what they're intended to be. So, you're a pedophile, you're a piece of shit, whatever. People are trying to say minor attracted people.
Oh my gosh, I've heard that.
They're going to call them maps. Like, get the fuck out of here now.
That's ridiculous.
That will not. No.
Trying to make it like they're trying to normalize it essentially.
No. Yeah, no. That's one thing the world can agree on. Victimizing children ain't gonna fly.
It's not, no. Not where I live.
No.
After that, Anna rolled her eyes. Anna, as soon as he said Josh refuses to accept that he's attracted to minors, I looked at her immediately and she just went. They talked about the fact that Josh would not receive help, that he didn't try to, he did no rehabilitation because he wouldn't even admit his wrongdoings. They talk about, that's when they say you have a big family, you have a lot of kids. Were you thinking about your family when you committed the crimes? As far as I know, his wife has the ability to work and take care of those kids. That's where he said that. He says, you got a big wife, you got a big family, you got lots of kids. Were you thinking about your family when you committed those crimes? And as far as I know, his wife has the ability to work and take care of those kids. He brought up the fact that Josh comes for money, The judge then says, I got some questions for you. So the judge asked the government a few questions, and he brings up the HP computer at the car lot. He says CP was downloaded and viewed 3 days, May 13th to May 16th. And they talk about the fact that the computer was seized, and he goes over what happened with Mr. Petrell finding no CP because it had been deleted, but he says his understanding is that there was only 3 days. Only 3 days when this stuff was downloaded and viewed. It was deleted, and it showed that if Josh had viewed it, every day for 6 months, they should have been able to find it, basically, because they found the fact that he viewed it on 3 days in May and it was deleted.
And there's also the trash. Like if you delete something right now off this Mac, it's going to go to the trash. And if you delete out of the trash, it's going to go to unallocated space. It's going to sit there until it has to get written over. So just because it's not there doesn't mean that it was never there. It just means that other stuff has been
maybe written
over it.
The judge expresses his struggle. He says, I struggle to understand someone that has an addiction to CP. He says, I've never heard of someone only viewing CP 3 days.
Because that's really not so okay. So that's really not a thing. And that's why that was such a big point of contention for this case, because time and time again, studies are going to show you it's been this way since I was in school for this. So it's going to show you over and over again that they're repeat offenders. They just are. So
that definitely wasn't the only time.
You know,
he's got another computer. He's figured out a way to get rid of it. And he just didn't at that point.
I mean, there's so many different options. There's one thing me and Clint will talk about later, so I don't want to blow it now because I'm gonna let Clint do it up. But there's different things. You know, maybe he just had those 3 days. Maybe he noticed something where he didn't do it anymore. There's a lot of different options. Some options which I can't say on here because XYZ reasons, but there are a multitude of different options for why it would only be 3 days. And also, you know.
Well, the judge says, he says, I have a hard time understanding, you know, because most people that are addicted to CP, they don't view it for 3 days, and that's it.
He's never seen it in any other case.
Yeah, he said, I've never seen this in any other case. He says, there was 3 days that this was downloaded. Then for 6 months, nothing. And then he asked the government, Mr. Roberts, he says, have you ever seen this? And the government says, I'm actually glad you brought this up. And he says, because Josh was in between employees at the car lot. So for 20 days throughout the month of May, Josh had no one there working with him. So what the government's theory is that Josh, first off, he had covenant eyes, and then he had someone working there with him. And that office is so small.
It's a shoebox.
It's literally a shoebox.
It's one of the things you get. No, it's like literally one of the things
tiny.
You get at like Home Depot.
Yeah, it's tiny. So like, say the employer is there and he's outside. The second he came in, almost he'd be able to see what Josh was doing on the computer. So the government's basically like, listen, he had employees up until, you know, beginning of May. And then he did not have anyone there for 20 days in May, and then he got another employee. So for 20 days, no one was there with him at, I keep looking at my phone, no one was there with him at the car dealership. So that's why they think for 3 days during those 20 days was when he looked at it, because he couldn't do it, you know.
And this was the one time Anna was pissed.
Yeah. Well, one of the employees was her brother.
Was her brother-in-law's brother.
Brother-in-law's brother.
And so when they brought him up, she was like she was actually upset about that.
But I'm like, why does she care about that though?
She was actually upset about it. I don't know why.
Yeah,
but that was the one thing I noticed. I'm like, that's what you're mad about right now?
Yeah. She's very confusing. You know, any emotion she may show, like laughing all morning before it started and drinking coffee when they're talking about the worst of the worst, and then, you know, seeming upset at that. I don't get it, because I'm like, okay. He said he also has a hard time believing that JD downloaded CP once over 3 days and got caught. But the first time he ever decided to download CP, you know, he said that isn't normal. And Josh shakes his head as in, no, it's not. So this is the judge at this point. The judge is responding again. He says, I have a hard time believing that Mr. Duggar downloaded CP one time over the course of these 3 days. And it just so happened the first time that he did it, he got caught by this. You know, he was arrested. And he said that's not normal and it doesn't really make much sense. And Josh is nodding his head like, yeah, you're right. It's not normal. That doesn't make a lot of sense.
Well, I'm trying to think of how I can say this. You absolutely, under no circumstances, are going to get caught the first time. There are certain things that put you on radar, typically speaking, like maybe, allegedly, supposedly, perhaps.
I don't know nothing about nothing.
I don't know nothing about it. If you were to maybe have a certain amount of images, then at that point you would become on someone's radar.
Yeah.
It's not like you downloaded one thing and got hit for that. So there's typically things that land you on someone's radar. I'll just put it that way.
Yeah.
I mean, if you just take a basic observation and you look at other cases like this, all these people are caught. Ooh, Clint's on here. Clint, you want to join us?
Yeah.
You get when you see people get arrested for this,
they had thousands of
things.
That's what they talked about today. Yep.
When they get busted, because there's
years.
Typically, you're gonna need to do something to get pinged.
Right. But he didn't.
Allegedly.
I saw a question a while ago that I was going to answer really quick, but no, it did not take. We were literally there from, I think we started at 9:30 and we were there till like 3:34. And we had
we just left the courtroom at 3:34. We were there till, we didn't get home till like 6.
How long did it actually?
From 9:30 until
like 3:34, with a 45-minute lunch. Because someone was like, "Dang, they went over all of that." Yes, they did. It was not just going in and he's like, "Well, this is what we're going to give you." It was an all-day affair. After that, the government talks about Duggar being a savvy computer user.
Listen, try to say something about my bestie, Gelfand, making an ass out of himself. I was like, if we're gonna take something at its word, and I was like, no, the F you did not. And then next thing I know, they're like, yeah, we did actually. In case you missed that, the court did accept that as fact.
I missed that part. I probably didn't, but I'm not catching what happened.
They said, like, well, Mr. Brandon says he's a power user. I don't even know what that means. Like, but if we're going to accept it as fact, and they're like, yeah, no, we did accept it as fact.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Wasn't it? Did the judge? No, it was the defense that said we're going to accept that as fact, and the
judge was like, I don't know what a power user means, but he's like, that's what we ruled on.
He's like, what's a power computer user, anyways? Like,
none of us know.
Everybody laughed when he first said that, but then the prosecutor brings up a man by the name of Jeremy Kelly, and he says, I prosecuted Mr. Kelly. He was arrested for receiving and possessing CP. He pled not guilty. He went to trial. He was found guilty. He was sentenced to 124 months. And I was the prosecutor on that case. The judge asked, is there any difference between Duggar's case and Mr. Kelly's case? And he says, somewhat. The difference is pattern. Mr. Kelly wasn't as likely to reoffend as what they think Josh Duggar is. So he's like, we gave this man 124 months, same charges, and we didn't even think that he was as likely to reoffend as we think Josh Duggar is. The judge was like, so double? You're asking that Josh Duggar received double? And he said yes, because one of the reasons is no accountability. He has to be aware, like he has to have some sense of awareness. No therapy, no treatment. There's Clint. Can they see Clint? I don't know if my people can see Clint, but your people can see Clint.
Well, why wouldn't they be able to see it if we're sharing?
They may can see Clint. I'm not sure. I don't know. I don't know what my people can see.
No, they're supposed to be able to see the screen. I don't know.
Well, you're sharing that. I'm not. So I'm sharing you on my screen, but this is your screen. This one.
But hold on.
I don't think so.
But hold on. This is yours.
Mm-hmm.
So copy Clint, you got to add this one too. We're putting you on double time. Sorry, buddy.
And you'll have to probably mute.
Just mute one of them and then not the other.
Okay, Clint's about to come in. After that, Gelpan came up, which was Josh Duggar's attorney, and he said, we're requesting 60 months, which is 5 years. He says, let's start with who Josh Duggar is. Lots of opinions from
he cleans up the crackers.
He cleans up the crackers. He says there's lots of opinions on who Josh Duggar is. He says, from people that don't know him, though, people that, just out in the world that want to comment on who he is, but don't really know him. He says, what about the people that really know him? The people that have known him for a lifetime. What about what they have to reveal about Mr. Duggar? And Josh is watching him intently as he's saying this. He says Josh is 30. How old is he? 34? I wrote 37, but I don't think he's 37. He says Josh is how old he is, married to a wonderful woman. That's when David Waller and the lady beside Anna, they shake their head. He says Anna has been by Josh's side every day during this trial. Once again, Anna and the people around her shake their head. The court looks at her. Jim Bob looks at her. Josh looks at her, and everybody kind of smiles like, oh, it's so great, you, Anna, that you stepped by him. They bring up the fact that Josh has no criminal history as far as being charged. They bring up how he's a hard worker because he owns a car lot, and he could just hire an employee to work at that car lot, but he actively works at the car lot. They say he spent decades dedicating himself to others. In a letter from the widow, they said the letter from the widow was the most telling. They said for the last 4 years, every month, JD provides financial help to this widow in the amount of like a couple $1,000 out of the spotlight, not publicized, never before any allegations of CP. This was before he was facing a sentencing hearing. This is what he was doing for this woman. Awesome sauce. Anna shakes her head in agreement. They bring up how Josh has employed people that other employers would not employ. He gives those people a chance that may have a hard time finding a job. He says, we recognize that this crime has real victims, and that's heartbreaking. And it's fair for the court to consider but what would be fair is for the court to actually consider what happened. For a 4-day period, every image permanently deleted, which they're saying, which he permanently deleted it. So it wasn't like he was trying to look at it again later on. It was over a 4-day period.
Well, and Clay can hit up the computers for us.
Mm-hmm.
Can you get did you get both streams going?
I don't see him on mine yet.
I can't hear you, but I sent you 2 links, and one's for LB's and one's for mine so that it's all one stream.
They talk about, they say, they got all of his devices. Some of these devices were used for 5 years, for every day for 5 years. Not a trace of CP, except on the HP computer over the course of 3 to 4 days. They then state case law. They say basically normal, like people that normally commit these type of crimes, they amass large quantities of CP over time, and they keep it because they want to continue looking at it. He said it would be fair for the court to take this case for what it is and what it isn't. So they say we're requesting a 5-year sentence followed by substantial probation period, supervised probation, release, and then obviously have to register as a sex offender. And he said, what really will be accomplished by sentencing Mr. Duggar longer? What is it going to send a message? And it's like, not really. It's not going to do nothing in this case. Josh Duggar will never find himself in front of this court ever again once he is released. That's what Josh Duggar's team said.
You'll have to have it on screen.
I think I got the audio fixed too.
Yeah, the audio is definitely fixed.
All right, let me do this. Hold on a second, you guys.
We're over here pulling some Matrix
We're pulling
stuff
someone
right
else.
now. Definitely over here working the Matrix.
There we go. It doesn't matter. Sorry, guys. Okay.
We get it working?
I think I have him now on one.
Have we completed Inception? Have
I'm
we
so sorry.
somehow pulled this off?
Yeah. I think
Now
so.
the question is, can the people on your live hear me?
Yep, you're all good.
Okay.
Can y'all hear Clint?
Does it let you do a different format on there?
Cancel. That's weird. I'm black for some reason.
I think that's your cell phone there.
That's because I'm in on my cell phone. That's right. How?
Okay, your chat's saying they can hear me too.
They can see me that way.
I mean, I don't know how to do it.
I don't know. You scoot over one. Scoot over and bring your mic, and you'll be in the middle. I'll be on one side, you'll be in the middle, and he'll be on the other side.
This is too complicated.
We're trying. Look.
We're trying, guys.
All you can do. You get what you get. You get what you get. Take it or leave it. It is what it is. We're doing our best. Okay.
All right. It says, most important, JD will follow restrictions set by the court because when he was out on his bond where he lived with the Reavers, they said that he took that very seriously. They said he, takes restrictions seriously. There was no violations when he was out on bond. Then they brought up
well, Clint, do you want to talk about deleting and how they're saying it's not there? And obviously.
Yeah, that was something that got brought up in the sentencing. Is Fan was saying that there was no evidence that the now your chat saying that they can't hear you.
Well, let's see.
Yep, because my mic is muted. For me to be on this one, my mic has to be on, and then that's going to cause them interference. It's going to be like, and if I go off, I'm going to be black.
Okay.
I'm saying I think it's because you have volume on here.
It's because what?
The volume on here.
I had to turn it off because if I turn that back on.
No, volume is coming from your phone. Turn the volume off on your phone.
It is. It's all the way down.
So let's see if it's.
Can y'all hear all of us or no? Yep, they said they can now.
Okay. So the thing about the deleted files is Gilfand was saying that they recovered a certain number of files and that they were there was a discrepancy between the number of files that they recovered and the number of files that the government says exists inside that zip file. The problem with that is when you delete a file on the computer, like we've kind of talked about before on the podcast, it doesn't actually get deleted. Just the marker that says where that file exists gets deleted. Now, if you come back quickly and you check that hard drive, you can then see those files. You're able to recover the files because just the marker is gone. But as you continue to use the system, the data that's physically on the disk, the ones and zeros that are written down to the hard drive, eventually get overwritten. And as those ones and zeros get overwritten, then you're not able to recover the files. So you're not, if you don't find files on a disk, that doesn't mean they never existed. You can only use that forensics recovery technique to prove that files did exist. You can't use it to prove that files never existed.
So it's safe to say, just because they found that he downloaded, viewed, and deleted CP on the dates of May 13th to May 16th, there's no way we can say for sure that 4 months before that, for 5 days in a row, he downloaded it, viewed it, and deleted it then. It's a huge possibility that he did, and it's just been kind of overrated.
So you can know for sure that he didn't do it on the Linux partition, because the Linux partition, there's a creation date on that. And we know that that was installed on, I believe it's May 13th. So nothing on that system occurred before May 13th. It's probably a pretty good indication that nothing occurred after the last date that the prosecution said, because again, that would have been newer. We probably would have had that evidence. That doesn't mean that it wasn't done elsewhere, but on that Linux partition, for sure, it could not have occurred because it didn't exist prior to that date.
Gotcha. Okay.
Okay, but did you see me trying to nuck if you buck when Gelfand said what he said? I was like, keep my bestie's name out your mouth, sir.
I saw that.
Mind your business. I turned around and I was like, no, he did not. I was not having it. He embarrassed himself today, honestly.
Oh my God. And what's even crazier is when they did their, when they outside afterwards, when they spoke to the press, he's just so cheesy. I'm like, I mean, I smiled at him because he was cheesing at me. He's like the biggest. And I'm like,
well, he's like, well, we're honored because we've got one count gone, and we have one more to fight, and of course we're gonna do that in 14 days because that's the
that's the deadline to appeal.
And I'm sure they already have it, I'm sure they are probably filed Monday morning, But yeah, he never has anything to say. He did this last time. He came out and he literally goes, "We don't have a comment." Like, gotta wait it around.
That was their comment, basically, is they're like, "Are you happy with today's verdict?" Well, it's not exactly what we wanted, but it's not 20 years. So, I mean, that's that. And we got one charge dismissed, and we're going to fight to get the other one thrown out.
But it's like, yeah, you got one dismissed, but no shit, because before you ever went to trial, you know that they're going to charge two. And if you get both back, they're going to drop one. So, like, you've not made an accomplishment.
That wasn't what he did. Yeah, that wasn't
what
he did.
Yeah, you've not made an accomplishment. That's how that works.
It was really weird. But yeah, the judge brought up several cases. They kind of all did. The judge brought up some cases, and then the defense brought up some cases, and then the prosecution brought up some cases to kind of. One case was Carey case, criminal history category 4, receiving and possessing CP, and he also. And this one. It was hands-on abuse. He possessed CP, and he himself recorded CP. And he held a knife to his victim and threatened to kill her if she said anything.
Sorry.
And he got 15 years, the Carey case. 15 years, criminal history, category 4, possessing CP, recording it himself, and holding a knife to the victim and threatening her life. And then they spoke about a case where the person had 22,000 images of CP and he received 60 months. This was actually Gelfand that said this. 22,000 images, 60 months. 4,000 images, 60 months. Producing CP, 60 months. Multiple devices, receipt and distribution, 60 months. So he says what we are asking is within the guidelines. This case has gotten a lot of attention because who the defendant is. And that's when I look back and I noticed that one of the brothers just snuck back in. And then he says, myself and Mr. Duggar appreciate the court treating Mr. Duggar like a real person. And Josh nods his head in agreement. And he says, showing Josh compassion and giving him mercy. He says, since representing Mr. Duggar, I've gotten to know him really good. He's a good person with so much more to offer. So we are asking for a sentence of 60 months. Also ask the prison recommendations of Siegelville and Texarkana. And then he said that Josh would not be addressing the court.
Yeah, he waived his right to do that.
And that's due to the appeal, more than likely.
Yes, because it could be used against him.
And then the judge goes back to the guideline range, and he says, so the max is 24 months. That's it. That's just advising him. It's not, set in stone, the guidelines range. Josh is taking notes. He talks about step 2, custom. I think it's custom to customize it to fit the defendant. And then he says we got to think about the seriousness. All federal cases are serious. Child sex offense cases are among the most serious. More serious, and the most serious of child sex offense cases is hands-on, which is not the case here. It's not hands-on case. And he actually said, I agree with Mr. Gelfand with the guideline. I don't necessarily agree with those. Okay, so Mr. Gelfand was basically saying there's some of the guidelines that they don't agree with, the way the law is written, that he didn't agree with it. And he was like, I agree with Mr. Gelfand with the 2G 2.2 guideline system. I don't agree with the way it is, but I can't change it. So he said that 59%, in 2019, 59% of CP cases received below the guideline range. He says.
But here's the thing, though, that here's the point of contention. And like me and Clint, we were arguing, not us actually, we were discussing this at lunch today. The reason why people don't necessarily like some of the stuff going on is because it's, for example, if somebody could catch a charge for distribution, you charge them with distribution. But you don't have enough evidence to charge them with distribution, so you try to hit them with the you try to get the distribution additive for their point system. But the issue is not that they tried to, well, for me, it's not so much they tried to do that. It's that it's the exact same as if you had been charged. So it's kind of like a scapegoat, and I'm not down with that. And that's just one of the many issues they're saying. It's not, they're not like defending any of these acts. They're just saying there's some what appear to be like legally fundamental issues with some of the, with how the law is written.
Yeah, for the guidelines.
The guidelines are written for the laws.
Yeah. And one of the things that he talked about concerning the guidelines, he says the levels actually increase if a computer is used. And he says the reason why is because the laws were written way back when back then, the way
1990.
Back then, the way you would view CP is like on a, I think he said like a disc, like you would have like a, I think he said a disc. Like most people.
So basically, you would film something and it would be, Clint knows about this better than I do. You want to do this?
I mean, it used to be, before the internet existed, any kind of illicit material like that, you had to meet physically in person. So
VHS.
Yeah, the VHS tape and that like physical Polaroid photos and that kind of thing. And so at the time, when computers became a new thing and then you were able to spread stuff much more easily, it was seen as, this is a serious thing because it takes a serious investment to buy a computer. I know my dad, he bought his first computer back in the 80s, and it was $4,000 for his business computer. And it could, basically just do spreadsheets, and that was it. Yep. So it was a serious investment to have that. And so to be using a serious investment like that to be spreading child pornography was seen as an enhancement. Well, now that's how it's done. Nobody meets behind the bushes and trades VHS tapes anymore.
Or Polaroids.
Right.
Yeah. So that was one of the guidelines that they don't agree with anymore. He's like, I don't really agree that the level increases just due to the fact that a computer is used. He says he has a problem with 2G 2.2 system, as does 60% of the federal judges, but they have to use the guideline and take it into consideration. Then they looked at 3 separate categories after that, which was content, community, and conduct. So he went over content, which was the volume, the number of images, which they went back and forth over this, but they settled on, I had 525 here, but I think it was 590.
It was 590 was the final number, because what they did is they did 75 pictures per video, 7 videos, which was 525, and then they accepted just the was it 65 that the agent from Little Rock was able to download from Josh. So that was the ones that they could. That was the ones that they could guarantee for sure. We know that these images were downloaded, and so Brooks was very, very conservative in his estimate there.
Why don't you explain the zip file? I tried earlier before you hopped on, but I said, Clint, there's things that Clint will need to address.
So one of the things there is it talks about like the zip file was extracted onto the hard drive, and there were thumbnails created and that kind of thing. Usually, when you extract a zip file, you're going to wait for the entire thing to get finished. Like if you extract the zip file, 90% of the time, that means that the zip file has finished downloading. So I would tend to agree with the prosecution's assertion there that even though we don't have like 100% definitive evidence that these images were all these images were extracted, like we couldn't pull them out of the deleted section of the hard drive, the file itself was downloaded. And so that means that those images were downloaded because they are contained within that zip file.
That makes sense.
So basically, to get a zip, you get the whole thing. Whether you looked at it or not, you got it.
Doesn't matter. You had it.
Yeah, I mean, technically, it is possible to do a partial extraction on a zip file. But I'm not sure that helps your case any, because that proves that you're desperate to see what's inside the zip file. So that, I think, makes it worse.
Well, what you should explain, just in case we have new people here, well, I mean, I know we do on LB's channel, that you download something on uTorrent and then you would go to the dark web to obtain it. So they're, in theory, saying you downloaded the code to open up the picture, therefore that counts as a picture.
Yeah, like, so the example or the analogy that Gelfand used today is actually a good one. He used the analogy of it's the difference between like a cake and a recipe. So the torrent file is the recipe on how you bake the cake. Then you use the torrent application, you feed the recipe into the kitchen, and then the kitchen produces a cake. Well, with a torrent, you feed the torrent file into the BitTorrent software, and it downloads the files for you. So what Gelfand was talking about there was we have these presence of these torrent files, and just because a torrent file exists does not mean that the contents that that file references were downloaded. So you'd have to not only have proved that the torrent file was downloaded, but that the actual contents contained in it were also downloaded.
Which is why they increased, I think that's why they increased the 65 other images, right?
So the 65 images, that was that specific zip file. When the detective from Little Rock established the connection to Josh's computer, she was able to download part of that zip file, and the part that she was able to download contained 65 images. And so what Brooks did in that point was, instead of trying to argue about how deleted space works and is there data corruption and are there duplicate files, he said, we know that these 65 images were downloaded. Like, these have been validated. We know for a fact. So I'm going to accept these as the only images that were downloaded. It is basically what he did.
Gotcha. So they settled on 590, which kept him at a level 4 because 600 would have been level 5, and it goes to volume.
He's basically saying y'all should have done more to prove that y'all had those images, and since you didn't, I'm going to err on the side of caution so we don't get anything overturned on something stupid. So because we were lacking things, I have to rule on an error caution, so it's going to not be that. I can prove this for sure. Y'all should have brought some more evidence to hit the 600. You didn't. You're staying in level 4.
People are asking about, because a lot of people saying, oh, he'll get out early for good behavior. He's only going to serve 10 years. He's not going to serve. From my understanding, I think you have to serve like 80 to 85% of your time.
So here's the confusion that people have. Most people, they hear stuff that's in state cases. Now, if it's a state's case, it's 40% at best, 40% before you're eligible for parole. This is federal. It's entirely different. You have to serve at least 80% and have earned your time off. And on top of that, there's different stipulations for that too. So besides the fact that he's already served 6 months, I fully expect for him to serve all 12 years. At best, he might get out a few months early.
So him getting out like in 10 years, I don't even think that's a possibility because it is a federal case. But I mean, don't quote me on that. I mean, but
like you have to do 80% and with the feds, but you got to earn the knocked off 20.
I need to get a source on it, but I have seen some people claim that there is there's a list of the charges in federal that you're allowed to get off for a good behavior early, and that crimes against children is not on that list.
I like to speak in generalities, not like Gelfand's generalities today, but that's why I say, generally speaking, you would have to do at least 80%. I fully expect him to do 12, aka.
Yeah, he will get credit for time served. He's been there like 6 months. So at this point, he basically has 12 years and 1 month. When it comes to content as well, for the 3 categories, the judge said back in 2019, the average for offenders was 4,250 images of CP. So, also content, the type of content depicted, even if the volume wasn't great, some of the images were the worst of the worst. This is what the judge said as well. Some of the images were the worst that court has ever encountered. And the judge said, I can't get the dog kennel image out of my head. Daisy destruction was sick, horrific. The type of content depicted is more aggravating than typical due to the ages of the victims. And the judge obviously don't want to, like, I could understand that he didn't like to reference it as like typical or common when saying that normally CP victims are 9 to 12 years old. That's common, but that's what it is. You know, like, unfortunately, the age range is normal for CP victims is 9 to 12 years old.
And it's actually going lower. The trend's actually much lower now.
Well, Josh is helping that out. And he talks about the fact that some of the stuff that Josh was watching was 2 to 4 years, infants to 2 years.
There's a 3-month-old is the youngest. It goes 3-month-old to 14 years old. Does that sound right, Clint? I think that's right.
I think that was the range, yeah.
Primarily 7 and 8. His choice age is 7 and 8, primarily.
He said, basically, it shows that Josh has a preference of younger than the typical. He says, I have intentionally searched for records I've intentionally searched record for description. I think what he was saying here is he's went through searching through records of other people that have committed likewise crimes.
I think on that one specifically, he was talking about searching through the court transcripts to see if the ages of the victims were identified in Josh's case.
Okay, gotcha.
I mean, personally, I felt
Right,
a
because
lot
he's
of I felt a lot of empathy for Judge Brooks. Yeah, I felt a lot of empathy for Judge Brooks because he kept repeatedly. He seemed like he was dancing around like, I don't want to have to look at this again. Like
He's like, we will not be
because
finding this out.
yeah, because that was the thing. Like when Gelfand contested the image count, Clayman got up there and was like, "Hey, like, we can pull this out. We can go count right now." And Brooks was like, "No, absolutely not. We're not going to do that."
They did say that. He was like, "We got it. We can pull it out." Yep.
He didn't want to do that. He wanted none of that.
But I think that count that he was doing, where he said he was searching through the transcript, I think that was the same thing. I think he just did not want to review the evidence.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, that's what he said. He said, "I've intentionally searched the record for descriptions," and then he says, "Exhibit 45, 7 to 9 years old. Exhibit 3A is 8 to 12-year-olds." So that I just didn't look below that to kind of understand. Actually, you saying what you said helped me kind of threw the light bulb off and was like, "Oh yeah, that's what it was." He brings up Daisy destruction, infants to 3 months old. He said tortured. He said it was the sickest of the sickest. He brings up Marissa Files, Exhibit 3639, 8 to 10-year-olds. He said that he viewed this as aggravating more than typical. And then he talks about collective behavior. A lot of people that look at CP, it's like an obsession. And he says,
time out. I got to point out that Michelle pointed out in that letter that her baby boy was organized. And when they were talking about all this, I was like, he might be a little too organized. You feel?
Maybe he's hiding his organized CP somewhere else.
Just saying.
And they said basically when it seems to be an obsession with it, they look at it a little bit differently because it's believed to be a psychological aspect to it. But they don't believe that in this case. They don't believe that it's a psychological aspect as far as Duggar looking at it because it didn't seem to be obsessive. He said he viewed this as more aggravating versus typical as well. Then they talked about special protections from detections. He says he finds these aggravating, and he went through. He talked about Josh going through great lengths to hide the fact that he was downloading and viewing CP. He downloaded software that would almost make it undetectable, or so he thought. Anna's like kind of shaking her foot again, like nervously. He says you had covenant eyes, and you figured out a way to get around it. So I'm viewing that as more aggravating than typical. And then they brought up internet community. So online, basically, if you establish a community that is with like-minded people, so I guess if you're on the dark web and you have started communicating with other people and you have literally formed an internet community with like-minded people.
There's like you get memberships and stuff to it. So it's like,
right.
You go to a website and you use some special code to get in, and it takes you to the back page of that website where they'll have like a fronter website where it looks like it's selling bicycles or some stupid shit. You type the code in, who's going to take you to the flip side, and then you pay a membership, and it's like you've got to submit something so that they know you're cool, and then they'll trade stuff that way. But it's like a secret society type thing, and it's an extra layer because it's like you have to figure out how to even find that.
Yeah.
Like
the only people that's really going to go look at is the people who are really interested in it too. Right. After that,
and several of those types of communities like that are invite only. Like you have to have an established reputation within those types of communities to get invited in. They try to do that type of vetting to keep out law enforcement, that type of thing.
That would definitely make sense. Obviously, they're gonna, yeah. That would bust their
There was a big case a couple of years ago where there was a huge site that was being used to front all kinds of stuff in child pornography was a huge thing that was sold on that site. And some hackers got mad about it and took the site down. And it turned out that the FBI had actually taken over the site about a month earlier and was running a sting operation. And these hackers, trying to do the right thing and stop the distribution of child pornography, ruined this months long investigation that the FBI was running.
Whoops.
It's typically not good.
That's crazy.
I mean, it's always something, I swear.
Someone asked what's Covenant Eyes. So that is an accountability app, basically. So Anna knew that Josh was addicted to porn, so they downloaded this app on their devices. So if Josh searched for anything that was like PG or nudity or anything like that, she would get an email letting her know so she could hold him accountable. And yes, Peter Scully is the person, the man that shot Daisy Destruction. He was arrested, and they actually considered bringing back the death penalty for him when he was arrested.
So since it's almost midnight, let's hit the highlights. I think is there anything more super?
It's just kind of going over all the things that he went through. But he talked about several cases where people that basically, when it comes to Josh's situation, this seemed like what was the normal, was a time range like this. From everything that he said, he goes over all of these cases. And I mean, I was like, okay, yeah, it definitely seems like this is the normal. It definitely seems like if he was to give him 20 years, it would be by what we're hearing here, that it would be too much. It would be over punishment by what we're hearing, all these other cases. Now, when the judge gave him the obviously he didn't say 12 years, 7 months. He said the amount of months, which was 151. He said, I sent you to 151. Josh, just kind of lean back for a second, lean back, and then sit back up. No, Anna, nothing. Jim Bob, he was looking straight, so I couldn't really see what his reaction. Nobody cried. I don't think his kids can visit him in federal prison. Also, I got something wrong when I went live earlier. He's going to be on 20 years supervised probation upon his release. And in the court, the judge said there will be stipulations, obviously. Random drug tests if his probation officer thinks that he's not complying. The judge said he can't watch adult porn, which he actually had his lawyer object to that. And then another one was can't be around his kids without supervision. And he gave the example of like his mom, his dad, or Anna. I thought he was saying that's who would be the people to supervise.
They're great examples. Of someone to watch. That is exactly who it's going to be.
That's who it's going to be.
That's the only option.
Yeah.
But you know what? They clearly protect children.
Right. Yeah.
They're great options.
Surely. I mean, obviously. But
there's no one else it could be. So.
Yeah, he said the probation officer will be the one to officially assign that supervisor. But I mean, if Josh goes home and he's living at home and they say, okay, well, some off the wall relative has to supervise you around your kids, well, what are they going to do? Move in with Josh and his family, or is Josh not going to be allowed to move in?
I mean, it's just when. So here's my thing: is like if Anna says, "Hey, one of our kids is sick, so you stay here with this kid while I take the other ones to school," that's in violation.
Yeah.
Or, hey, I got to run to Walmart real quick. Can you go pick up our kid from? They don't even go to school, but go pick our kid up from church. No, that's a violation. Piano practice. No, that's a violation. So that's what people don't realize is the little things. And I don't know he's got a kid that's like what? Oh, we just had a kid.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess
a couple months old.
It could be. Hey, they'll be aged out by the time he comes home.
Be 12. I mean, that'd be out of his range pretty much. And I wondered that someone actually brought that up. Somebody actually said, "Do we think it's possible that he gave the sentence of 12 years old because that's when his kids will age out of potential victims. It's a thought.
If it's nothing that's ever going to be, it's a fantastic thought, but it's nothing that's ever going to be substantiated because that would be.
Oh yeah, definitely not.
You know.
Yes, he is definitely staying in jail right now. Obviously, he's at the
Washington
County.
Center.
Yeah, Washington County Detention Center. Whenever they have it approved of where he's going to go, that'll take some time. I mean, I don't know how long, but it's not going to be tomorrow. You know, I mean, it'll take some time for the paperwork to get situated, and then he'll be transferred to federal prison. And I don't know.
Gen Pop, baby.
Do you think they'll put him in general population?
Oh, yes, absolutely. The only reason why he's in solitary confinement right now, that's normally used as a punishment or, you know, like death row. It's not something that just happens, but he was a federal prisoner being held in county custody. And because of protections and things like that, that's why he was in solitary confinement, because he's a federal prisoner in county custody.
We see, like, where we live, the jail, they only put people arrested for crimes against children in one area.
Yeah, we have a
They
wing.
don't. Yeah, they have them in one wing, and they have them away from general population. That way, obviously, general population.
But with the feds, he will be. But with the feds, he'll be Gen Pop. I mean, there's no reason to keep him in solitary. I mean, we might be in solitary at first, COVID protocol or whatever, but
I think it would definitely put him at the potential of being, you know, people find out they're going to know who he is more than likely. I mean,
the man can't have
will.
electronics. You don't think he's going to be touching a phone or a TV or, I mean, what's he going to get a damn jitterbug to call people on? And y'all know he loves to use the phone. Or, I mean, my followers, we've gone over the call logs, so I know y'all at least know how much he loves to use the phone. So unless he's going to get a jitterbug and just chat it up, there's no way he's going to make it. There's no way. And you know what, though? You got to think about it like this. Not that anybody's going to report it, but I'm saying, let's say he's at home and he picks up Anna's phone. Anna's phone would have internet access, and that would be in violation of probation or supervised release. You know?
Mm-hmm.
It's Hot Mess Express.
Yeah. I mean, because that's something else. He can't have electronics, anything that has access to the internet when he gets out. And I don't know how that's going to be possible. At any point, he's going to be, I mean, Anna's obviously on her phone. Oh, but one thing that they did bring up is the HP computer that's in evidence. And they're like, so we have the business of the computer. Duggar's attorney stood up and was like, yeah, nobody wants it.
Yeah, we forfeit ownership to
Nobody
that.
wants that computer. The state can keep it.
But they have to preserve it. So, bless me. Sorry. They do it with every case because you keep evidence for so long. In any type of case, you're going to keep evidence for so long. So, regardless, they're wanting them to forfeit it because they have to keep it in evidence for so many years because of the case. And especially because it's going to go through appeal process. So, they have to do it again. Nobody want no HP computer. Hard pass.
There was a lot of things that was interesting today. I mean, Clint, what was your most interesting?
One thing that I haven't seen anybody comment on that I thought was interesting is everybody's talking about the internet restriction, where he can't have a computer, he can't have a cell phone. But one thing Brooks said there is he's also not allowed to have a device that is capable of displaying a picture. Like he can't have a camera either.
Yep, you were so right. He did. He said that. Let me see how I wrote that. That's exactly what he said, though. He cannot have a device that has a capability of storing images.
That means no TVs, no phones, no iPods, not that they make this anymore, but you catch my drift. No cameras.
That's the market for the iPod Shuffle. Now I understand what Apple was doing.
Right. Yeah. Clearly the iPod Shuffle is for offenders.
It's so well, though, because when the judge was like, he can't view adult pornography, Josh immediately leans over to start talking to Gilfan. And I'm like,
you do not have the audacity to do this.
I'm like, he does not have the audacity to tell his lawyer, I'm going to need you to object to that one because that just ain't what happened. I'm like, even if he wants to really bad, he's not gonna fight that fight because look at where we're at. You know what I'm saying? Like, no, but sure enough, the judge like, I got any objections to that? He's like, yes, Your Honor, we got an objection to you not allowing him to view adult pornography. That's violating his constitutional rights, and it's not against law to view adult pornography.
But yeah, me and Clint's like, well, it's a violation of First Amendment. That's true. Yeah, I agree with that. But here's the deal. Given the type of case this is, the audacity is on next level.
He should have went with it. He should have accepted it.
Right. But then on top of that, it's like, you act like he's so moral and such a great family man. But hey, of all things to object to, I want to be able to watch my porn. And then his wife is sitting right there.
I would have been so embarrassed. Which she did get up and walk out. Like, she took off pretty quick.
It was done, and you were allowed to go. And he was walking to that corner, and she was like,
phew. And I was like, maybe she's mad because he threw that objection out there for the porn. Maybe she's like, yeah, this is the embarrassment right here.
Well, how are you going to say objection? It's his First Amendment right to watch porn. Like, why even? Given why you're there, and given the arguments that you make about how you're so great, and like, why? Just why even?
What are the odds of Anna being allowed to supervise? I think it's highly probable.
No, she absolutely will, as the mother of those kids. Yeah. So she 1,000% without a doubt is going to be the one supervising.
I don't think somebody said Anna will be moving on. Hope with finds a decent man. I don't think that's going to happen at all. I mean, literally, when Josh walked in, she's like, "I love you," like giving him googly eyes, like
it was like this.
And literally, everybody wants her to stay with him. Anyways, there's not even. I don't even think there's a question of her like. Should I leave? Like, I don't even think that's a question in her mind.
She didn't have not shit to say to Jim Bob, though. Nothing.
She didn't. And that was weird. That was weird that at the trial, I saw video of them coming together, leaving together, him, holding the door for her. But at this one, she arrived not with Jim Bob, and then they did not leave together.
Any computer points, Clint, that you thought were insane or just, I don't know, just stupid in general?
Not really. The one thing that I did see that I thought was interesting was after Judge Brooks had declared the sentencing, before he was done, there was a question that he asked Josh, and I don't remember what the question was, but Josh answered and said, "No, Your Honor," and I swear I heard his voice break when he said that. It was very brief. It was very subtle, but that was he displayed emotion there. And that's the first time I've seen that.
He's probably scared of how much trouble he's going to get into.
I caught that as well, but it seems like my memory is telling me it was like the first time he spoke to the judge in court. It was like the first time.
It was definitely after the sentencing because it was definitely after. It was like before, like after the time before the fine. I think is where that was, and I don't know what the question was, but it was.
It broke.
His voice caught. Yep.
Maybe it was when he was asked about making it, addressing the judge, asking for leniency, making a statement if he would want to do that. Maybe it was. I know what you're talking about, though. What he said was "No, Your Honor," and his voice cracked. And I was like, "Are we getting emotion here? Are we getting emotion? Like, are we seeing some sense of emotion from him?" Yeah, people can put money on his books, but all the money they're gonna have to shell out for them fines. I'm sure that ticked Anna and Jim Bob off.
Or pissed Josh off. That's on.
It was 50,100 was the fine.
Mm-mm.
And don't he have to start paying that immediately? Didn't they say immediately?
Brooks said it was due immediately. And then if he wasn't able to pay immediately, then there was a payment plan that they outlined.
It's just, how tired are you, Clint?
I'm exhausted. I've been up since 3:45 this morning, so.
I feel that.
Yeah.
I feel that. Well, it is almost midnight, so Probably should let everyone go because I know we all can get up for that. We're watching Depp tomorrow.
Everybody was watching Johnny Depp while we were watching Duggar.
Listen, y'all had a way better day than we did.
Yeah, we got to get caught up on that.
I'm kind of depressed about
I
it.
know. After we got out and I saw
we gonna miss Depp and Kate Moss and then all this. No, like I had FOMO for a reason.
I know, right?
I told people the second I left, all the good stuff was gonna happen.
So the fines are, oh my goodness,
$100 for the count, $5,000, $15,000, $30,000, total of $50,100.
Yeah, I didn't catch what the breakdown was. Like I got the numbers written down of what they were, but I didn't catch what the categories for each of those fines was.
Because mine says 10K, interest will be waived, $100 fine, 5K special assessment fine, 35K special assessment fine, brings a total of $50,100 due immediately. Payment 10% of or if he needed a payment plan, they would do 10% of the defendant's monthly total income. I think that's what he said.
There was something he said about up to a maximum of 50% of the defendant's income, and I don't remember what that was in relation to.
Someone did, the blonde that Anna was sitting with at the beginning, she walked up to Anna and said, and hugged her and said, "Are you okay?" I couldn't hear what Anna responded, but she seemed fine. I mean,
I don't know who that was. She was sitting next to me for a while. She came in after lunch with coffee, and she sat down next to me, waited a little bit, and then went up front and brought Anna the coffee.
The cup I was gonna steal down there by security.
The coffee cup? Yes, she said when we walked in, I said, "Whose coffee?"
I said I would literally hit a bitch for the coffee.
Yeah. I was like, "Whose coffee?" You're like, "I don't know."
I looked at the cop and I go, "I'm considering committing a crime for coffee right now." And he looked at me like he didn't think that was funny in the least. But well.
But yeah, so
I mean, I think that's a good summary for,
yeah.
I
mean, we have a lot we'll probably be going over at some point. There's still stuff in here, all the objections and how he ruled on them, and one was in regards to distribution and
basically he got his ass tore up from the floor up today is what happened. He got scalded hard. But politely, so it's even worse.
His attorney did too several times, and I was like, "Ooh." He's like,
there was one time where Brooks he said something to the effect of, "Mr. Gelfand, this is not a negotiation," or something like that.
Yep. I'm pretty sure I wrote that one down.
Yeah.
But I thought, and I never heard him address any of the attorneys from the prosecution. I never heard him say anything out of the way like that to them. But they didn't have to. They were very respectful, very to the point, cut and dry with everything, while Mr. Gelfand was trying to nitpick images and play word semantics on, do you think this is sadistic? Well,
he has word ticks, and Clint, I know you've heard me make fun of it during the podcast, but I'm like, please stop. Let me be clear. But let me be clear. Bro, if you'd explained it right the first time, it'd been clear.
Yes, Joanna was the only sister there, and her situation got brought up again, and I felt terrible. A part of me wanted to look back to see, but then I was like, I wouldn't want her catching me look at her when that's being brought up, so I didn't.
Yeah. So she was sitting behind me and one seat over while that was being discussed. And I did catch out of the corner of my eye that she had a tissue. But I was not looking back.
Joanna, when people say Joy, they mean Joanna, which was one of Josh Duggar's sisters, the youngest one that he sexually assaulted. The youngest one that he sexually assaulted, which was the worst case because of what he did to her. And then she was lied to while growing up and did not even know Right? I don't even think she was aware of what really happened until it came out in court. And she was sitting there, her and her husband, and they said what he did, and she got really upset, and so did her husband.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to go ahead and end mine, you guys. Thank y'all all for hanging out with us. I'll be giving more information, over the next few days. I got a long drive ahead of me, so won't be no content tomorrow. Yeah, but probably tomorrow night. But thank you all for hopping on with me. Keep your eyes on my channel, so if I'm going to go live or if I'm going to post something, you guys see it. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Goodbye, everyone.
So Clint could not do backup because Clint was secretly going to sentencing and didn't want anyone to know. So everybody was like, wait, why can't Clint do backup? Why can't Clint stream it in case something goes wrong? And I'm like, Clint's not an asshole. He 100% would definitely stream it for us.
Yeah.
But I just can't tell you that he has decided to join the fuckery. And so.
Yeah, it was kind of a last minute decision. I was going back and forth on it until Monday, really.
Well, aren't you glad you came?
Yeah.
I don't answer that.
It was tough. It was very tough.
I guess I'm the only soulless son of a bitch that attends these things.
No, there was a point very, very early in the sentencing where I was sitting next to Carrie, and they started talking, and I think my testimony was one of the first ones that they brought up in the sentencing, and I was like, "Oh, that's how we're doing this. Okay, that's great."
Well, go get some sleep because I'm about to.
Yep.
But you already know I'll call him Buggy tomorrow, so don't think you're getting out of that. Also,
sounds good.
Love how I had to mess with you today. So I was like, "You okay over there, bestie? You okay, bestie?"
Bestie.
Had to make it official, as if it wasn't. But yeah, it's just like one of those dogs that pees on a tree. And I had to do that to you today.
There you go. There you go.
It is what it is. But yeah, go get some sleep because I know you're tired.
Oh, well, y'all have a good evening.
Yes, Clint. Thank you for hopping on with us. It was very interesting. Bye.
It was good to meet you too.
Oh, and we're still on your stream. Bye, you guys.
Bye.
Love you guys.
Bye.
Devil horns, what some people say.
Right, that's what it looks like.
I know when I heard that she saw